Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It's the Big Me Kickoff here at noon. I'm Kevin Noon. If you should be able to put it all together, as somebody once said, "Hey there, all you cool cats and kittens," but she may have killed her husband. So uh, I have not watched that new Joe and Carol show on Peacock. How about you? What are you watching there? We've got a lot of stuff to talk about here coming up. I'm going to give people an opportunity to get on board before we get into the meat of this show. A lot of stuff going on with the start of spring practice. The Buckeyes are in the Big Ten men's basketball tournament. We're just coming out of the NFL Combine. A lot of things going on. You may be able to hear the sirens in the background. It is 12 o'clock Eastern here in Central Ohio. The tornado sirens go off just for the test on Wednesdays, so I have that serenading me right now. It's been a while since we've done a live show. And, ultimately don't want to wear everybody out with a lot of lives. Would like to do 2 a month. We have stuff going on, though, right now, and that's good. With the start of spring practice, with the start of the insanity. And that doesn't mean that nothing has been going on in terms of football. They've gone through mat drills. Mickey Marotti and his staff have been working closely with the team through whatever that is, the 7 weeks of mat drills and weight training and everything else. Hand the team over, have a champion's lunch, not a dinner this time, a champion's lunch, hand the team over to Ryan Day, and we go from there. We'll get into some roster numbers, some things there, some people who will not be going through spring practice. Again, waiting for a couple of people to show up into the chat. We certainly will touch back on this. Again, this is your show. This is your show. You guys pick what it is you want to talk about. I prepare some things. I maybe get about 75% of the things into the show. 25 doesn't generally end up happening because we end up going off on tangents, and that's fine. I mean, that's totally fine. I do this show for you. This is not me talking about what I want to talk about. That's all of the other shows that I do that are just pre-recorded, and I don't have any direct feedback with y'all. I can just kind of talk about what I want to talk about, and we go from there. But you guys set the show. You guys set it up, and you pick topics. So, be sure to... Well, first of all, if you're watching us on YouTube live, be sure to hit the bell, subscribe to the channel, and let your friends know. Let everybody know about the channel. Let everybody know about Big Me Kickoff. Let everybody know about all the great content that we're pushing out here on the Buckeye Scoop channel with Gives in the Bank, with Morning Scoop, with Buckeye Weekly podcast. All of those good shows. The more people you put out there, the more that we're going to be able to be seen by them. If you're listening to an audio version of this later, give us a 5-star review. That helps us with our distribution. It gets it out there to more people. All of it helps. I want to say hi to some people. The first people in here, It's Time by GDJ. Exactly. Ed Rogers with a nice comment there. I'm your favorite, Kevin. I don't want to know who your least favorite Kevin is. I'm saving Brady from boredom. Sue's going to be here. Sue loves the podcasting live shows, so that's going to be there. Everybody knows Sue on there. Ed, I've seen your question. I will try and get to that here a little bit later in the show. I'm not sure if I can answer that in order because, again, it's not necessarily a case of saying that you're going to roll these guys out in an order because you're going to have inside guys, you're going to have outside guys. If you're playing JSN inside, what does that mean for Emeka Egbuka? I mean, Emeka Egbuka could be your number 3 receiver, but if you're in a particular situation, you're playing JSN inside, does Emeka slide outside? I mean, or does he give way to other receivers at that point because of formations? And the thing is, and Ryan Day said it, they're not opposed to playing 5 or 6 receivers. They have 2 that they know of for sure. When you have Jackson Smith-Njigba, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., and then you need to try and figure out from there, be it Emeka Egbuka, be it Julian Fleming, be it Jaden Ballard, be it the 4 new receivers that are coming in with this class of 2022 with Kojo Antwi and Keon Grays and Caleb Burton and Caleb Brown. They're going to have a lot of opportunities to roll guys in and out. So I guess I'm answering the question now. I don't know. I mean, JSN is your one. You know that. And they're going to play him inside. They're going to play him outside. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for them to do things. We kind of have seen what we've seen out of Marvin Harrison Jr. We saw him have 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. Obviously, that was a big deal. Great routes, as you would expect as a, son of an NFL great and Marvin Harrison Sr. We certainly have seen bits and pieces of Julian Fleming. We've certainly have seen bits and pieces of Emeka Egbuka. So you know what's going on there. What happens with Jaden Ballard? Jaden Ballard, kid out of Massillon, he needed a little more seasoning. I mean, certainly just was not a case of where there was an easy path to get to the field quickly. What does it mean not having Chris Olave? What does it mean not having Garrett Wilson? What does it mean not having a pass-catching tight end? And I use that term loosely in talking about Ohio State tight ends in Jeremy Ruckert. How do they spread it out now at this point? So I'll be interested to see how all of that works out. As for who's the fastest receivers, I don't know. I mean, we can get into, and I have some stuff prepared on the combine. It was really interesting to see, on official times, Garrett Wilson beating out Chris Olave. Garrett Wilson ran a 4.38. Chris Olave ran a 4.39. We certainly thought that Chris Olave, according to unofficial times, set one of the fastest times ever with, what was it, like a 4.24 something. And obviously the loss of Charlie Casserly from NFL Network, they broke in somebody new to do the stopwatch, and we had a lot of hype there about that, only for the time to be corrected by 0.15 seconds or something like that. Now, as for the guys they have now, I don't know. I've not seen a lot of these receivers in action yet. I've not seen them even. I had an opportunity to see Kojo Antwi at the All-American camp. I had an opportunity to see Keon Grays. I've had an opportunity to see a couple of. I've seen Caleb Burton go out and run drills, but it was just him and a quarterback. So you don't know. I mean, they're not going to sit there and put them out there and do right. These are the definitive 40s that we're going to have them run to kind of figure out who's the fastest guy or whatnot. I don't know at this point. So one thing is for certain, they're all fast. They're all fast. There's not a plotter out there. And really, when we're talking about somebody, if they run a 4.5, that's still moving. I mean, compared to us mere mortals. But there's speed is speed. I mean, obviously what Jamison Williams was able to do when he was with Ohio State, and then when he was Alabama, he's, fast. I think you need to be fast enough. So much is put into how quick you are, but you better run good routes too. If you can sit there and run fast, and if you're not doing anything, or you're not where your quarterback thinks you're going to be, it doesn't really matter. I go back to Chris Carter's son, Duron. Duron had one route when he was at Ohio State. And I'm not saying that's a Duron issue. I mean, maybe Ohio State really only worked with him on one route, and it was a 9. And that's what he did. And, he never really looked all that fast because they weren't doing a lot with him. So I don't get too caught up in that 40 speed at this point, especially here in the preseason. Let me see these guys run routes. Let me see these guys go out and do some things like that before I get too caught up in hundredths of a second, whether or not you're a 4.48 or you're a 4.41. Yeah, it matters. I mean, I certainly have worked for recruiting sites throughout my career, so I understand the importance that we've conditioned everybody throughout to be very concerned about those 40 times, but it's one of those double-edged swords. It sells subscriptions for sure, but it's not the end-all be-all either. If you go out there and you run like a 4.75 as a receiver, then okay, that's a problem. You're still going to beat me by a full second in a race, probably more. But we're talking about athletes at the top of their game playing in high Division I college football. These are guys that are expected to be able to run. But let's get into a couple of things as more people are starting to get into the chat. I'm getting your questions. Be sure to give me your questions. I'm putting them in my favorites queue. We're going to go about an hour and a half. I've got another show to appear on here later on Wednesday for those of you who do the live podcasts. On Wednesday, there's a general show that myself and Tony Gerdeman are part of. That will be at, I think, 2 o'clock today. So I want to get clear to save my voice a little bit there. But one of the big questions that is always asked going into spring practice is, what number are the first-year players wearing? What are their jersey numbers? And granted, we don't have a video game. I remember there was nothing like when the new roster would come out and you had the game and you could go in, you can plug all the new players in, you get really excited about that. The game is still, a year out, maybe more. We can go round and round about that, whether or not they cannibalize the Madden engine or they really kind of start fresh. It sounds like they may cannibalize the Madden engine to a certain extent, which I'm not very much in favor of because they were two very different games, but I digress. If we want to talk about the video game, we can talk about the video game later, but let's take a look at some first-year roster numbers. Now, these are the players that are here for spring. These, there are a lot of players, Hero Canoe, among others, that are not on campus yet. So if you don't see your favorite player from the recruiting class, don't worry. They just haven't been officially placed on the roster as they are still members of high schools at this point and not at Ohio State. But CJ Hicks is going to be wearing number 11. Caleb Burton's going to be wearing number 12. Transfer safety from Oklahoma State, Tanner McAllister, is going to be wearing number 14. Quarterback Devin Brown will be wearing 15. Jair Brown, no relation, will be wearing number 17. Chip Trainum from Arizona State, formerly of Akron, Ohio, will be wearing 19. Ryan Turner will be wearing 24. Go to the next column. Gabe Powers will be wearing 36. Safety Kai Stokes will be wearing 37. Offensive lineman George Fitzpatrick will be wearing 68. Bennett Christian will be wearing 85. And Caden Curry on the defensive line will be wearing 92. So certainly, a lot of excitement there with the numbers that these first-year players are going to be wearing. None of them getting single-digit numbers. And generally, I think that's to be expected as veteran players want to transfer into those single-digit numbers. Funny you should ask. Here are some of those number changes that we're going to see this year. Kam Babb moves to number 1. Emeka Egbuka wears number 2. Running back Mayan Williams will wear number 3. Linebacker, for now, and I think it'll ride. Cade Stover will wear number 8. Jaden Ballard will wear 9. Donovan Jackson moves up into number 72. And tight end G. Scott Jr. will wear 88. So there you go. You have 5 veteran players wearing single-digit numbers. Now, we've talked about over at Buckeye Scoop who might wear number 0, which is the Block O jersey for Ohio State. Keep an eye on Kam Babb. I think Kam Babb could be a good candidate. He is, quote-unquote, full go, according to Ryan Day. And you have to feel so good for a kid that they voted a captain last year, has had nothing but horrible luck in terms of injuries. Let's, go back a few years. Johnny Dixon was very much on that same path. Johnny Dixon just could not put 2 or 3 practices together without re-aggravating something. He gets healthy at the end of his career and goes on and has a nice season there to wrap things up. I would love to see Kam Babb be somebody who can do that. And that was somebody that we didn't speak about when we were going through the question about the 5 receivers. And the reality is Kam Babb sometimes gets forgotten because he's been here a couple of years and just hasn't been healthy enough to go. So it's easy to make that oversight. It's not, I mean, and it's an oversight. It's an accidental oversight. It's not a case of, oh, well, we just don't want to talk about him. We don't have faith that he's going to be healthy or not. You just don't think about him at this point. And we saw a picture posted on social media earlier on Wednesday of the receivers, and seeing Kam Babb as part of that group. I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, you have to be thrilled about that opportunity. Kam Babb has a lot of tremendous skills. We just haven't seen them because of the injuries, just because the knees have not been there for him. But I really think that if he is able to go, he's going to give the Buckeyes, just that much more. And then once you get past JSN, once you get past Marvin Harrison Jr., it's going to be interesting to see how that works. And I'm going to jump into a question from Sue. How does he get on the field with the depth of that wide receiver room? Well, he's got to get his number called. I mean, it's just that simple. You got to get your number called. They're going to put the best players out there. And you got to say right now, Kam Babb, just for the time that he's been in the program, is obviously going to have an edge over the true freshman in terms of knowing the system, taking the mental reps, being part of everything there. Granted, he doesn't have the game experience, so he's going to be just slightly ahead of them in terms of game experience. But you have to sit there and say, okay, well, now he's, slot him in the middle just in terms of the conversation at this point. Now, where does he compare against, a Jaden Ballard in terms of experience? Jaden Ballard has not had to deal with the same type of injuries, the same type of adversity, but he's kind of had to wait his turn a little bit as a young guy. Jaden Ballard and Kam Babb are very different body types. They're not, they're not competing. Everybody's competing. There's only one football. There's only one ball to be thrown out there, and everybody's competing for reps. Everybody is competing for receptions, etc. That's all going to be there. So there is a competition head-to-head in some instances, but you're not necessarily going to sit there and say Kam Babb and Jaden Ballard are going to be pulled for, okay, well, we're going to pull Ballard out to put Babb in it with, the same expectations of, what they're going to do. I mean, Ballard is a much taller, bigger kid than Babb, and Babb, Babb certainly does some things very differently than Ballard. So I'm glad I don't have to make those types of decisions. We don't, even under the best of circumstances, we don't get to see all of practice. When we do get to go and see bits and pieces of practice, it's 3 periods, it's stretching and punt and get out at that point. You don't get to see a whole lot. So you're not getting an opportunity to see every rep, every snap. They don't make that available to us. We don't get the opportunity to see that. So it's difficult to judge some of that. But the fact that Ryan Day singled Kam Babb out and said he's full go, it would have been very easy to just sit there and say, well, we're hoping for the best for Kam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He got mentioned, so it's going to be a matter of, I mean, you get him out there, there's going to be somebody that's not going to get those reps, and there's you're going to have to balance things out. I mean, they certainly have some big receivers, but Marvin Harrison can't play every down. Emeka Egbuka can't play every down. Jackson Smith-Njigba can't play every down. So you've got to just find a rotation there and go with it. And the truth of the matter is of the 4 wide receivers that are coming in as the true freshmen, I don't think it's realistic to expect that all 4 of them are going to be able to go and have huge years in year one. It's just not how it works out. I mean, let's go back to Jackson Smith-Njigba's career. He really didn't emerge until the Michigan game of his year, of his first year. And obviously he has all the talent in the world, but it just takes a little bit of time. So, if they get to 5 or 6 receivers, I think that Kam Babb certainly can be in that 5 or 6 receivers pretty easily, as long as he remains healthy, based on what I've seen in terms of the little glimpses of his talents. So, we'll see from there. Now, let me go to the one other list that I have here. Let me take this comment off. And these are going to be the players that are going to be unavailable for spring practice. And that doesn't mean that these are the only players at this point that are not going through things. There are players that are still dinged up at this point who might be ready to go come after spring break or, maybe toward the end, but these are the ones that have been listed by Ohio State as being unavailable. Some of them are scholarships, some of them are not. Linebacker Ryan Batch, defensive end Jacoby Cowan, running back Marcus Crowley, safety Jansen Dunn, defensive end Tyler Friday, offensive lineman Josh Fryer, linebacker Kate Kaczerski, offensive lineman Harry Miller, safety Lathan Ransom, and tight end H-back, in my opinion, however you want to put him, Mitch Rossi. Now, we'll kind of go through a couple of these guys here. Lathan Ransom, we all saw the horrible injury that he sustained in the Rose Bowl during the kickoff return by Utah, where Ransom and another Ohio State player ran into each other, and he was taken off the field on a cart with an air cast. That's going to be a pretty lengthy recovery for him. Marcus Crowley, we know, just dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I mean, you got to feel bad for that kid, as we had a long segment talking about Kam Babb. Marcus Crowley has had the opportunity to play, which is something Kam Babb necessarily hasn't, but Crowley hasn't been able to avoid the injury bug. Tyler Friday, he missed the entire last season with an undisclosed injury. He is not going to be ready to go at this point. He's somebody I would expect maybe by fall practice. Josh Fryer dealing with an injury. And then we get to Harry Miller. And let me come back on camera here. Harry Miller, I'm not being vague when I say we really don't know all of the details there. And we don't. And I don't want to speculate, because that's the worst thing in the world I could do when you're dealing with a young man like this, is to sit there and speculate and say, well, I heard. I mean, maybe you have it right. Maybe you have half the information on it. Maybe you have 3/4 of it. Maybe you have none of it. I just don't want to hang anything there. I mean, I've heard a combination of things. It's not as simple as one thing or another. But, this is a bad spring to be missing out as we sit there and we see a situation of, as Ohio State has a couple of vacancies on the offensive line, how are things going to shake out? I mean, the center position seems to be kind of locked down right now with Luke Whippler. Then you have your guards. What's going to happen there as you move? You're going to be moving Paris Johnson back outside. Obviously, you have DeJuan Jones on the other side. Then you've got guards competing for those spots. And at this point, if you really sat there and said, you got to pick it for me, what do you see? I like Donovan Jackson in one of those spots, and I like Matt Jones in the other. And it's going to be difficult, with Harry Miller not being able to go through things at this point. And jump in with Ed's comment. Yes, Harry is a cool dude. I mean, he honestly, his interviews are, mind-blowing at points, because he gets into all of this philosophical stuff and, reading the great works. And, I consider myself to be, relatively, I have cocktail party knowledge. I know a little bit about everything. I'm not sure what I know a lot about. I know a lot about talking about Ohio State, but he just talks about things that are just like 6 levels over my head. And, at some points it's fun. At some points it can be a little intimidating as well. So, you wish the best for Harry. Just don't know what's going to happen at this point. Now, I'm going to segue into something, and don't read too much into this because I'm not saying anything here. Let's not forget the fact that Ohio State is still sitting at 91 players. And when I say 91, I'm saying once the summer enrollees get there. So they're not at 91 at this point. So don't be looking up all your 317 area code numbers and be like, Ohio State's over when you're calling the NC2A. They'll get it sorted out. But they're going to have to be 6 guys that are going to have to find greener pastures. I mean, whether or not it's their decision or their urge to look elsewhere, or however things are going to happen, we know that the roster we're looking at today, plus the summer enrollees, does not equal your 2022 Buckeyes, because they are going to have to make some decisions. I get asked all the time, who do I think is going to go? I give the same answer all the time. I'm not going to put that on anybody, because if you sit there and you say, I think John Doe is going to leave, and John Doe doesn't leave, then there's automatically this bias that some people are going to have of, well, I heard he was going to leave. And then it takes on a life of its own. And it also is a situation of where, if you say that about somebody, does that mean you're saying that because you don't believe that they can perform at this level? And it creates some negativity. And ultimately, I've got to be around this team. I've got to be able to talk to these guys. And if John Doe hears that Kevin Noon said, well, he should probably just transfer, John Doe is either A, not going to talk to Kevin Noon, or B, is going to have issue with Kevin Noon. So that's just not the right thing to do. And yes, I understand athletes are getting paid now. I can't, with NIL, I can't sit there and say they're just college students. They're just college students. You can't be doing that. But they're still 17 to 22-year-old kids. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not comfortable doing that. That's just not how I roll. If others do that, that's on them. I generally don't see a lot of that though within our market. So I'm not saying anybody is doing that, but I'm not the keeper of everybody's information. Everybody's going to do what everybody's going to do. So, take it for what it's worth. Explain voodoo economics. Hashtag stick to sports. I'm not going to get into any of that stuff. I'm not going to get into any of that stuff at this point. We're almost a half hour in. I want to sit there and let me jump in. My buddy Mike over here. In-N-Out versus Five Guys. Well, I know that I'm going to sit there, and there are a lot of people that have their opinions. Burger wars are very serious. I'm always going to take In-N-Out. That's just what I'm going to say. I don't view In-N-Out and Five Guys as being in the same sector. Five Guys is like significantly more expensive than In-N-Out. I can go and get like a 4x4 at In-N-Out for the price of a Five Guys burger. Probably even more. I could probably get like a 6x6. Five Guys is fine. I like Five Guys. I go there maybe once a year because I just really have issue dropping $20 on a burger, a bag of fries, and a soda. I just don't like it. I get to go In-N-Out even less though because we don't have any in Ohio. West Coast, they have them in Texas. I am in Texas a decent amount. I end up at Whataburger a lot more just due to convenience than I do. I put In-N-Out and Whataburger maybe in the same, they're in the same price point. They're in the same realm. Whataburger certainly has has some advantages because they have a full menu as opposed to In-N-Out where we got burger, we got fries, we got shakes, and that's it. And, you can sit there and you can kind of adjust some things around, but we don't have a lot of things. And that's why In-N-Out's able to sit there and maintain some pretty decent prices. And, I'm not going to get too far into how prices are working right now, but, yeah, so that's my In-N-Out over Five Guys at this point. I think their burger's better. I think it's much more economical, and I'm a West Coast kid. I grew up in Southern California, so I am going to have that nostalgia factor. I like Del Taco better than I like Taco Bell, even though both of them are West Coast. But Del Taco, I have a nostalgia factor, so it is what it is. So, Mike, thanks for watching. That's my opinion right there. I'm going to go to a couple questions before I get to some more prepared stuff at this point. Let me jump into the queue. We hit Ed's question about the top 5 receivers in order. Brady, do you think the Knowles system will become more 4-man front centered given what that front should be able to do? He kind of went through, he was asked during interviews on Tuesday to kind of talk about what the nomenclature of his positions were, and with what he had there, he did have a 4-man front. But again, that's, without having, with having one practice under their belt and still learning personnel, I don't know. I mean, I still think that's going to be a lot of 4-2-5 type of situations of what they're going to have. I mean, certainly this is a team that has recruited for that 4-man front, so that's kind of where they're at. I don't know. I don't want to get too far ahead. A lot of this, I think, is a much better question for Ross Fulton. I'm going to try and get Ross on Big Me Kickoff probably next week. I haven't talked to him about it, so Ross, if you're watching, expect a call. I don't know, but I think that the front should be able to do a lot of things. Something that we learned during interviews yesterday is that they're taking a look at Mitchell Melton as somebody who could maybe play a little bit of hybrid, play a little bit of linebacker, play a little bit of line. It'll be really interesting to see what they're going to be able to do. What is that rush in position going to look like? What are their plans there? Something else that we learned as well is kind of the nomenclature of how they're going to handle the corners and how you're going to have your bandit, which is your boundary guy, your boundary safety. Your middle safety is going to be the adjuster because he's the guy who adjusts the defense. And then the nickel's a nickel. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. It'll be interesting to see what things look like if they really do want to try and get Court Williams and Ronnie Hickman out there at the same time, which on the surface, based on what we've seen before, seems a little counterintuitive. But we're dealing with Jim Knowles coming in. He's the head coach of the defense. He certainly has some plans of his own of what it is that he wants to do. So, we'll kind of see from there. I'm going to jump in with the super chat right here. Thanks, Cameron. Who's the odd man out in the safety room? Seems Josh Court and Rocket and Ronnie Hickman are fighting for 2 spots. Are you sold on McAllister as a lock at nickel? I think that you're going to have to. I think especially early on, we're going to see Tanner McAllister out there. He's somebody who understands this defense, who understands the Knowles system, and he's a pretty good player. How is that going to translate from the Big 12 to the Big 10? We'll find out. But Jim Knowles was so complimentary of Tanner McAllister, of how he's handled his business and everything else. I don't see a situation where Jim Knowles has just this blind loyalty and he's like, well, he's my guy. He came over with me. He's going to get in regardless of what the personnel looks like. I think we're going to see some rolling of guys out there, especially as they try to find the right mixes. And I'm going to be hesitant to say exactly when I think I'm going to see Josh Proctor out there 100% as Josh Proctor. You're dealing with somebody who's been dealing with some injuries. It's really easy. And I know we're looking ahead. It's March 9th. We're looking ahead to September. We're looking ahead to October. He's going to have a lot of time to get right by that point. But one of the biggest aspects of coming back from an injury is the mental aspect of it, even more so than the physical aspect. You get hurt once, that's one thing. You get hurt again, and when we're not talking about, oh, my arm, it's broke. We're talking about real significant injuries. Can I trust my legs to do what I need them to do? Can I trust all of this to work the way it's supposed to? So, I have no reason to bet against Josh. Great kid. I think that he's got plenty of talent, but I don't know what that safety rotation is going to look like. Jim Knowles doesn't know what that safety rotation is going to look like. Until you have Josh out there and you have Josh going through and being able to give 100%, which he's not at right now, and then just because of rehabbing from the injury, I think it's a little premature to get there. I'm going to jump into Sue's question, which is kind of was right there too, talking about Williams and Hickman. You got to put Tanner McAllister in there. You really need to put Tanner McAllister in that mix. You bring him over to play. You just don't bring him over to come out there and hang out and eat food at the Woody and just be a cool dude. He's here to play for sure. So you got that. Cameron had another one that I had saved in the queue about odd guy out there. So I don't know. I'm not even going to sit there and say that I'm going to know anything after the spring game, because again, who's going to be able to go, who's not going to be able to go, and then what happens over the summer at this point, so I don't know. Adam asking, biggest differences we'll see in the Knowles defense. Well, first I want to thank Cameron for the super chat. That means a lot that people do contribute through the super chat to this show and to this channel. Thank you so much. Back to Adam. I think that the lack of predictability is going to be really important. I think that their defense was very predictable, especially early in the season before they made the change when it was still Kerry Combs calling the defense. And this isn't an anti-Kerry statement. I've known Kerry since he was head coach at Cincinnati Colerain. I love Kerry. But the defense was predictable. It was, here we are. We know what we do. We think we do it well. I don't know if they did it very well. We know what we do, and this is what we're going to do. And then you sit there and you make the change, and you have Matt Barnes in there, and then, they change some things up, and maybe the predictability is a little different. But again, I think that making a change in something mid-season is like trying to change an engine at 35,000 feet. What are you really going to be able to do there? So I think that we're going to see less predictability. I think we're going to see more blitzing. I think we're going to see more kitchen sink blitzing. I think that Knowles is not afraid to go out there and go cover zero and send everybody. I think we're going to see less constraints on the defensive line in terms of see ball, get ball. And again, it all depends on what they have. It all depends on what the rush in position is going to look like, what they're going to have from Jack Sawyer and some of these guys, and from the other in position with JT Tuimoloau out. What's going to happen there? But I think we're going to see some changes there, and I think we're going to see a defense that's going to be a work in progress. And that doesn't mean, and so many times we hear work in progress, and that means, oh, so you're saying it's going to be crappy and then it's going to get better. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can't bring in 3 new defensive coaches and completely turn over almost the entire support staff on the defensive side and just say, okay, well, we're going to just roll this out here, and in 6 months it's going to be a fully functioning, clone of the offense in terms of its, firepower. It's going to take a little bit of time. Jim Knowles didn't go into Oklahoma State and turn the Cowboys around in a season, let alone in an off season. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But I think we're going to see a defense that's going to be a lot more aggressive. I think we're going to see a defense that's going to do a lot of things in terms of disguising. I'm really excited about the changes that I think we can see. And again, we're not looking at a defense that's going to have a lot of new pieces. Yes, they do go out and get Tanner McAllister. Yes, they do go out and get Chip Trayanum to move him to linebacker from running back. They are going out and getting a couple of pieces that, certainly McAllister I expect to play. Chip, it may take a minute. But the way that we saw Steel Chambers move from running back to linebacker, I wouldn't bet against seeing Chip out there against Notre Dame in some meaningful situations. And it might take him a couple weeks. I don't know. I don't know at this point. So I think that we're going to see a defense that's probably going to, are we going to see a defense that's going to allow 7 less points a game? I don't know about that. Let's not make it sound like Ohio State was giving up 35 a game. Ohio State was giving up 35 a game in big games, maybe even more. I think we'll see an Ohio State defense that will have a little bit more consistency in terms of that. But when you have an offense that's going to go out there and just put up points in bunches, I think that's going to be huge for them. Hardy does not like my Del Taco. I'm sorry. My first job, 15 and a half, worked at a Del Taco. It was right next to the high school that they had. All the high schools in Irvine fed into one school for driver's ed. So I would ride my bike, go do driver's ed, and then I would ride my bike over and go work at Del Taco. And it was fine. I didn't end up working during the school year that year. I ended up, I had a job during my senior year of high school when I wasn't in tennis season. But I just like Del Taco. Again, I'm familiar with it. Going back through my notes to make sure that I keep moving on things. Here we are in our favorites. Jalen. If Tyleek is the guy, they think he forces a double team on pass reps, giving everyone else one-on-ones. I want to see Ohio State play Tyleek more consistently, but I want to see more consistency out of Tyleek. So again, this is one of those things without being in the room. You hear things that maybe Tyleek just wasn't completely consistent? Did he get blown out just for the amount of time that he played down in the middle of the season? I mean, it's a long season for guys that are either coming out of a shortened high school season or maybe no high school season. I think he could really be something. I mean, but let's see what things look like under this Knowles system and what they asked him to do. Let me check that one off. If Kam is healthy, what type of playing time can we expect for him? Kind of getting back to Sue's question. I don't know. I don't know. What is Jaden Ballard going to carve out? I mean, are we going to have a fully healthy Julian Fleming that's going to be carving out time for himself? Are the freshmen going to step into things? I mean, what is Ohio State going to do? I mean, if Ohio State's offense is as potent as we think it can be, and that's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. If it's as potent as we think it can be, does Jackson Smith and Jigba play much beyond early third quarter in a lot of games? Does Marvin Harrison? Does this open up an opportunity? And I think one of the things that you have to remember too is Ohio State has to get something from its backup quarterbacks. CJ Stroud is going to be playing his final year at Ohio State. Ryan Day has seen what it is like not having a returning snap really coming back to start a season. Then again, that ended up leading to CJ Stroud going on and finishing fourth in Heisman voting. But I think it's going to be very important for Ohio State to bring in Kyle McCord, to bring in Devin Brown, and allow them to run the offense. I mean, maybe they're running the offense with a number 2 line. Maybe they're running the offense with the number 2 and number 3 receiver cores. But they have to be able to come in and run the offense. Going out there and putting the ball between the 2 and 1 of Evan Pryor, or whatever the number of Dallin Hayden will be, student body left, student body right, isn't helping them in their development. So if you get there, and let's just say that Kam Babb is not able to be in the top 3 of the receivers. Again, we know that JSN is locked into his spot. I feel really comfortable about where Marvin Harrison is. I mean, I think Emeka Egbuka has shown plenty, Julian Fleming, but even if he's in the 2s, and again, if they say they're going to play 5 or 6, you can see 4, 5, and 6 play with the 1s, but I think that there's still going to be an ample opportunity for him to come in and see some reps. But knocking on wood or particle board with what my desk is, he has to stay healthy. He has to stay healthy. As long as he stays healthy, this is going to be a fun topic to talk about all year long. So, we'll see. Cameron again, will we ever see a full contact spring game? No. Next question. No. Jim Knowles was asked on Tuesday about practicing tackling, and he said that he's not even really for getting guys down to the ground in practice. So why are you going to sit there and be getting guys down to the ground in the spring game in a glorified scrimmage? And I understand we all want to see football. It's mid-April. The season is months away. We saw a team last year that wasn't great at tackling. Jim Knowles was talking a lot about how positioning is important and some other things. So, it's always going to be thud. It's always going to be thud. We're not going to see a change in football where we're going to see more tackling. We're in football where we're going to see less tackling. And I'm all for that, to see less tackling to ensure that we're seeing football. Now, when I say seeing football, I don't ever want to see the sport of football becoming, actual games of competition becoming thud. That's not what this is about. At that point, you've lost it. But I think that when it comes to a spring game, when it comes to something that, I get it, people pay hard-earned money. I mean, even tickets are $5, $10. I don't even know what tickets cost a spring game. To go, you buy concessions where you need an arm and a leg. Gas to get there is probably going to be your other arm and leg. You want to see something that resembles football as much as possible. But can you imagine playing a spring game and having 2 catastrophic injuries in it because you just wanted to have a better showing, have something that looked better on TV? I mean, that would just be horrific. And you can't predict catastrophic injuries. Non-contact injuries happen with no contact. That's what they are. You're out there running around and something gives. That has nothing to do with full contact or not. But by taking full contact out of the equation, I think you insulate yourself a little bit more. So that's my take on that. Let me get back into what we've got live at this point. I guess tickets are $7. Again, I have no idea what they cost. I really don't. Frank saying hit those like buttons. Absolutely. Please hit those like buttons. Thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all of that good stuff. We're closing in on 14,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel. That's huge. One of my missions when I came over to join Buckeye Scoop was to raise engagement, to get more subscribers. So it would be a personal favor to me. Anybody who's not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit that thumbs up for me. It would mean a lot to me. Let me just kind of go through here. Frank is really excited for some football. Here's a question for y'all. Are you going to watch any of the USFL games? Yes or no? And I'll kind of wait for the lag in terms of the stream for you guys to be able to get this and for me to answer it live. We've certainly seen the AAFL. We've seen 2 iterations of the XFL. Spring football, we love the idea of it, and then it goes away. I was probably one of the few people that watched every week of XFL 1.0. Granted, I was watching wrestling at the time too, so I was like, oh, maybe we'll have some crossover. And then it just never really happened. And XFL did really good numbers week 1. They gave a little bit back week 2. And then by the time you got to about week 4, nobody was watching it again. Frank is not going to watch USFL. Again, I am such a football junkie that during the season, when we get into like the postseason, I watch D2, I watch D3 playoffs. I enjoy it, and I understand. I understand where the people who are going to say no. Some people are saying that they might watch bits and pieces or whatever. It's very different football. You are not, you're not having in the NFL. You've got the best in the profession playing. In college football, you've got the best, especially in D1A of that age group playing. And then you get to the USFL and, you're going to have guys that either couldn't quite make a roster or make the 53 in the NFL. You may have guys that had an opportunity to have a cup of coffee in the NFL. You may have some guys who played a few years and then, lost their spot because, NFL, we know it means not for long. So the game feels a little bit slower. The game feels a little bit more sloppy. Nobody's really had a great plan here in the last 10 to 15 years to put together a spring league that makes sense. And I will admit, I didn't watch the original USFL. I did not watch that. I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in LA, outside of LA. We didn't watch the Rams when we had them. So I certainly was not great about watching the USFL, but I so desperately want it to work. I want it to be an alternative, especially as long as baseball has its head up its own ass. I mean, I need something there. I just have not been able to get into hockey this year. I've not been able to. I know I'm not a big NBA guy. I respect the athleticism. I respect the artistry. I just don't care. I can't get into it. I've tried. I've tried to get into the NBA and I don't care. And I don't think that there's anything. I think the thing that the NBA could do is if rosters would stay together at least a couple of years so I could figure out who the hell's on a team. But, all sports to this day, I mean, I grew up as a Dodgers fan in baseball, and I had an infield of Garvey, Say, Russell, and Lopes. And then, the big thing is when Steve Ferguson at catcher, and then it was or Ferguson and to Yeager to Mike Scioscia, I didn't deal with a lot of roster turnover. I'm really busy. And I can't sit there and research who the hell is in the on a team. So I don't know. Yakov asking if I watch any CFL football. I don't. I should. I don't really know where it is at a lot of given times, but I'll give you an idea of what a sicko I am going to baseball. When baseball wasn't playing, I watched the Korean League, the KBL. I couldn't tell you who my team was. I picked a team and everything. No, I didn't buy a hat. I didn't buy a jersey or anything. If I ever buy another ball cap again, my wife said she'd divorce me. I've got hundreds of them, and I don't really wear jerseys except for hockey sweaters. I'm a big Blackhawks fan, but I don't know. I should watch it, but I don't. There's some people who certainly, that some people prefer the NFL, some people prefer college. GDJs like me. I certainly prefer college football. I do. I mean, I watch the NFL. I mean, now that it's a 19 game schedule, whatever the heck they're playing, or 17 games. I don't even know. I watch almost every week. I take a couple of weeks off because, especially if I have to cover high school football in a given week, and I'm going high school, college, the wife's like, something's got to give. You've got to, and if I have to watch high school for work, and I got to watch college for work, Sunday sometimes is date day. So, it is what it is. But, I think, hoodies, like in the NBA playoffs, I used to be that guy. I think it changed a couple, 3-4 years ago. I just can't even really get into it now at this point. And, it's just a personal preference. It is what it is. But the problem is I'll watch the NBA draft, and I don't know who half the players are. And I know that we see a lot of times where we have players from overseas that are sign and stash, and you never hear from them again. It's great that basketball has become kind of the world's game in a lot of ways. It's not going to overtake soccer in terms of being the world's game, but it's a much more worldwide game in terms of how it's played. And you're seeing players coming out of other countries that are just, remarkable, fantastic and everything, who don't go through the American college system, who play, on the under 16 and under 18 teams and go through that way. But I just can't get into it. Perhaps you could follow some individual sports such as tennis and golf. I used to watch tennis. I played tennis. I played tennis for a long time, and then I got fat, so I don't play right now. And I watch tennis because I could play tennis. I don't watch golf because I'm horrible at golf. I don't know if that makes any sense, but let me get to some of your other questions here as we've gone off on a complete tangent. I want to thank everybody who's joined us here on a Wednesday afternoon. You can kind of tell it's kind of off season right now. Numbers are down, but that's fine. That's fine. We got some of our diehards here. If I ever started doing the show on more regularity, I have a feeling we would be back to some of our numbers. We got some of our normal watchers during the season. Haven't seen them post here, but I know guys like Treasure of the Torah and some of our other regulars. I mean, I would expect to see more of them as we get closer to the season. Let me find my Word doc here. Let's talk a little bit about the NFL scouting combine. 7 Buckeyes went to the combine, and we know that I think main attention was on the 2 receivers, so Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Chris Olave measured in 6 foot and 3/8, 187 pounds. Garrett Wilson, 5'11 and 3/4, so just a tick under 6 foot, buck 83. Olave runs a 4.39. Garrett runs a 4.38. Both are first round picks in my opinion, and I think it's just going to be such a great receiver draft. I've seen mock drafts with Drake London as the first receiver off the board. I've seen mock drafts. We got take a timeout. We got a super chat, and then I will get back to the draft. Jordan Kapler jumps on board. If you were elected the NCAA Commissioner, what would be your first order, and why would it be nominating me as your VP? Well, because you just gave us $10 in super chat, obviously. I mean, duh. I don't know. I really think, and I know I sound like a broken record when I say this. I think there needs to be a split of Division One football. And I'm not saying that I think that the NC2A needs to come in and take it over the way that it does 1AA and some other things. But I think you really have the haves and the have-nots in terms of Division One football, Division 1A football, FBS, what have you. There are teams that are committed to playing, and then there are teams that just play to fund their other sports. I think, and I understand by taking away the teams that are really committed to playing, you may sit there and take away paychecks from these other programs, and in doing that, and that's bad because ultimately that doesn't hurt football. That hurts non-revenue sports where football pays the bills, and everywhere football pays the bills. I mean, football, men's basketball are your profit-driven sports. You might have a third sport that might be revenue neutral. Certainly baseball does well in the SEC and some southern divisions. Ice hockey does well in certain areas. Wrestling does well in certain areas. And again, you're not looking at a ton of scholarship outlay there. So once you paid for the building and everything else, you're not dealing with a ton of expenses. But you certainly do have some sports where it's just maybe friends and family in the stands, and I mean it's difficult. So to get back to the main point, I think that you need to sit there and look and see whether it's 64 teams, 48 teams, 60 teams, whatever, how many of them are truly committed to competing in college football to win, and you create divisions there and create a true playoff there instead of saying, well, we're going to go to 12 teams with the 130 teams that we have here, but we know honestly 20 teams are trying, 30 more are kind of there and could maybe dumb their way into something, and then 80 teams are just there to try and, are just along for the ride so they don't get fined. If you get to that point, maybe you need to get to 48 teams and create, 4 divisions there and sit there and set up a playoff system. So, is that something that the NC2A has to do? With me being commissioner, as the smartest guy in the room, of course I'm going to sit there and interject myself at that point and try and make that happen. Certainly going to upset a lot of people at that point. I mean, again, we don't like change. I didn't like going to the playoff. I like the bowl system. I've been proven wrong to a certain extent, but in some ways I feel like I've been proven right. When there's 8 teams that really are going to compete year in and year out, and 8 teams really may be a high, a high number there. Walter, I enjoy doing the show. I really do. I mean, a lot of times, I can give these opinions over on the Ask the Insiders board at Buckeye Scoop, and I do, and I enjoy that. That's part of my job too, but sometimes it's a little bit easier to have the immediate back and forth more so than I type a response, 45 minutes later you type a response, 17 minutes later I see it and I reply again. You don't get that kind of back and forth. So I enjoy doing the live. Again, if I felt that I could support a live weekly, I would do that. I certainly would do that. I am here for you guys. I think that a live a week might be a little excessive. So again, we're shooting for twice a month. I couldn't tell you the last time I did one of these. There has to be news. I think there has to be something going on. We could sit here. We could talk about where the best breakfast buffets are at hotel chains. I mean, I've seen us talk about anything and everything on this channel, so it's certainly there. Oh boy, what does Hardy Jins have for me here? The bowl system in Del Taco. What kind of monster are you? A horrible one. The worst kind of monster. That's what I am. I just nostalgia. Maybe it's the South Park member berries. I don't know. Do you think that the playoff is working? Do you think the playoff in the 4-team iteration is working? I will throw that one out there. That's not just for Hardy. That's for everybody. Do you think under its current workup that the 4-team playoff is working? we will sit on that one. We will let that one sit out there for a minute. J Nips 15. Kevin, do you think expanding the playoffs will decrease the meaning of regular season games? I like the regular season. It's what makes college football the best sport. I do like the college football season. I think that the college football season is great. I know that people have had, oh, well, look at the NCAA men's basketball tournament and how that works out. Well, again, I think that it's a lot easier in basketball to have one or two players that go off and play an insane game. It's a lot easier for, I don't want to bring up Oral Roberts, Ohio State, but it's a lot easier for Bryant to come out there and upset Michigan State in the men's basketball tournament than it's going to be for, if you expand the playoff too much, for, I don't know, Oklahoma State to upset Alabama, a motivated Alabama team in the playoff. So does it minimize it? I mean, you certainly can make that argument. Well, it doesn't matter if you lose that game because you're still going to be fine. You might lose home field if they do play on home field. Then again, we have people out there saying, even Gene Smith, who I really like Gene Smith, but I just have to disagree with him on this point of potentially playing it indoors at Lucas Oil and not mandating that home games in the SEC get played at the what is it called now? It's not the Mercedes-Benz Dome either. Well, they got the one in Atlanta, but the one in New Orleans is, I don't even know. You can't sit there and do that. And you can't have a situation of, well, we want to have Lucas Oil as a backup because if it's snowing in Ohio or whatever. You can't pick up game operations in 3 days and say, oh, sorry, we're going to play this in Indianapolis instead. So, I kind of have gotten off on a little bit of a tangent. I don't like the idea of 12. I think 12 is too many. Maybe 8. I don't know. Once they sat there and said that we're not quickly moving toward this end, I kind of lost interest in following it, and all of my thoughts just went right out the other side of my head because I can only maintain so many thoughts before something has to go. But you agree with me, so obviously great minds think alike. More like Plane Zero. Love Running Man. Greatest bad movie out there. Cameron would love to see us do this once a week. We'll see. I don't know. We'll go from there. Let me jump back into talking about the combine for a minute. Jeremy Ruckert measured in at 6'5 and a half, 252 pounds. You had your two Ohio State offensive linemen there, Munford 6'6", 328, MPF 6'5", 316. Those were approximation heights at least. We didn't have people going out and tweeting all of the official measurements because we didn't have a combine last year, so people were trying to do some different things. Tyreek Smith, 6'3", 254. Haskell Garrett, 6'1", 298. I was talking about Olave and Wilson in a crowded, top-heavy receiver draft. And obviously, it would have been interesting to see what Jamison Williams would have looked like running out there. What is a team going to do with Jamison Williams after he had a pretty catastrophic knee injury that's going to take some time to repair? How many teams are going to be going after receivers at this point, and what does that mean for Olave and Wilson? Who's the better draft prospect between Olave and Wilson? What say you? You're talking about guys that are, half an inch different in height and 4 pounds different in weight, but they're not the same receiver. Everybody's like, oh, this guy's the next whoever. Well, no, everybody's who they are. I mean, you could have identical twins and they could still excel at different things. But who do you think is the better prospect? Not who do you think is going to get drafted higher. Who do you think is the better draft prospect? Who is going to have the better NFL career? And again, I understand we can't. You go to a system that has a crummy quarterback and a crummy offensive system, and that's where careers go to die. So you can't necessarily predict that. But all things being equal, who has the better NFL career? Who do you think is going to be the guy? JNips15 thinks Olave has the higher floor. Um, I don't disagree with that on the surface, but that doesn't mean, I don't know if I'm looking for an answer on the floor. I'm talking about maybe on the ceiling. Who has the higher ceiling in terms of what their career could be? I mean, Olave is proven to be just this technical route runner who just does everything well. Garrett Wilson goes out there and not only does the simple easy, he can go out and do the difficult. But, I've also seen Garrett Wilson get dinged up. I mean, granted, he's back out there 4 plays later, but, I don't know. All right, let's see some of your answers as they're coming in. Olave is the better of the two, especially after he proved he's got speed to burn. I think that I always felt Olave had speed. I always felt that he was fast. I always felt that he was faster than fast. The fact that Garrett Wilson edged him out 4.38 to 4.39, I was a little surprised by that one, to be honest. I think that we would see more Garrett Wilson plays on You Got Mossed segment. I think that Garrett Wilson could make defensive backs look sillier than Chris Olave. But I think Chris Olave's consistency lends to potentially putting him in a better situation. But, Hardy agrees with me. It depends on the quarterback. It depends on the system. So I know it's kind of a loaded question. I know it's a loaded question in terms of we can't necessarily, again, it would be easy to sit there and say, okay, we're going to run 2 realities. We're going to put Olave on Buffalo. We're going to put Wilson on Buffalo in this reality, and we're going to run it for a year. We're going to see what it looks like and compare, but that doesn't happen. That's not how it works. This isn't Rick and Morty. We can't do that. So there's something to be said. So, this question doesn't necessarily have an answer. This question deals with a lot of unknown variables, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it ends up working out. Hopefully in 5 years we remember this here on Big Me Kickoff, and we're doing a similar show, and we go, all right, well, remember when we talked about this in March of 2022? Here's what we know now. Let me jump in here. Here's one for Wilson over Olave, but just on the other side, here's one for Olave over Wilson. Hoodie just wants to see Chicago, get Olave. That would be something. That'd be something. I was talking to a Bears friend of mine and who had this silly belief that Olave was going to be there in the second round. And this is before Olave ran the false 4.2. And I said, well, do you think he's going to be there in the second round? So, we'll see. We'll see. Chicago needs a lot of help. I'll be interested to see what happens there with that. And it's just me, Tim, 79. The real question is Jackson faster than Garrett? I've seen Jackson run away from guys, but I also saw Jackson get run down in the Rose Bowl by Clark Phillips and got the ball dislodged. Granted, I think that all things remembered, we're going to remember many other things about the Rose Bowl from JSN, and we're going to remember that fumble. So we'll see. I'm going to go to a question that Tony Gerdeman asked me on the message board. Let me jump over to this. Because I want to get the question right. He said, if all Big Ten players were dropped into a draft by Big Ten coaches, how many quarterbacks get drafted ahead of Kyle McCord? So that's an interesting question because let me just tell you, Yakov, I will be on the Mark Rogers show here in a little bit. So I'm going to take this one to about 1:30 Eastern, give myself 30 minutes to rest my voice, and then I'll get on that show for about an hour. let's get to the quarterbacks. Now, this is kind of my guess of who are going to be the starting quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that somebody couldn't draft somebody else, but here are the quarterbacks that I think are going to start this year. Now, at Indiana, Connor Bazelak, he is not necessarily going to be. He hasn't been assigned the starter position yet. They still have Jack Tuttle. They still have Donovan McCulley. The former Missouri quarterback, though, seems to be kind of the guy. At Maryland, it's pretty simple that Talia Tagovailoa is going to be the guy. At Michigan, Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy would be in a battle. Obviously, McCarthy's kind of slowed up, though, due to an injury. They're going to kind of wait and see. Michigan State's top guys, Peyton Thorne. Sean Clifford is going to be the guy at Penn State, but of course they have Drew Allar. You got a couple of quarterbacks at Rutgers. Gavin Wimsatt reclassified. He could be the guy as they just sit there and say, we need to just put all of our eggs in one basket, but they have Noah Vedral too. We jump over to the West. Let me turn the page on my notes. Tommy DeVito is a Syracuse transfer. They also have Artur Sikowski, who was a transfer from Rutgers. We certainly know what he is. Spencer Petras at Iowa. Alex Padilla could push there. Tanner Morgan is by far the best quarterback on that roster. You got a couple of transfers over at Nebraska with Casey Thompson from Texas or Chuba Purdy from Florida State. You got Ryan Helinski at Northwestern, Aiden O'Connell, and Graham Mertz. So to kind of get to Tony's question, you're doing this all-position draft. And, let's just not even do an all-position draft because I don't think you need to. I think you just need to look at the quarterbacks because, okay, you go out and you draft, this defensive player or whatever. That's immaterial in terms of this. How many of these quarterbacks would you take over Kyle McCord? And that's a March 9th Kyle McCord who has whatever action that he had last season, and that's it. Obviously, we know what Ohio State has, and CJ Stroud's fine, so we're just going to take him off the board. That's not important there. What are your feelings on Tagovailoa at Maryland? We certainly have seen him put up some big numbers. There are going to be some pluses. There are going to be some minuses with him. Do you take him over McCord? What about McNamara or McCarthy at Michigan? One thing that we can't get away from is that Michigan, try not to have any throw up in my mouth, won the game last year. So it is what it is. You can't take that away. But they did a lot of that on the ground. But when he had to throw, he did a fine job. He wasn't some huge liability. And the question is he even really the guy there, or should it be McCarthy? So do you take either of them above McCord? Sean Clifford obviously is important to Penn State. We saw what last year looked like when they didn't have Clifford. But you sit there and you put Drew Allar into the mix. Do you sit there and do you take a flyer on a kid there like you would take a flyer on Gavin Wimsatt and take him? I don't know. Getting back to the West, Aiden O'Connell in that offense did a fantastic job. David Bell's not walking through that door right now, though. He's not walking through that door. And does Aiden O'Connell take a huge step back? What does Casey Thompson look like in Nebraska? Obviously he had to move on from Texas. He's not necessarily walking into a more talented offense at this point, but we don't know what Nebraska is going to look like because they've completely changed their coaching staff. So could the argument be made that Kyle McCord would be the second quarterback off the board after CJ Stroud? Is he third? Do you take Tagovailoa? Do you take one of the Michigan quarterbacks? Do you take O'Connell just based on what we saw him do in terms of last season? Because the thing is that if we're redrafting teams, it's not like we're putting O'Connell back on Purdue. You could sit there and go out and get one of Ohio State. Hell, you could get two of Ohio State's receivers and have Aiden O'Connell throwing to Jaden Ballard and Kojo Antwi. I mean, so you don't necessarily know what you don't know what that situation is. I'm hesitant to say Kyle McCord is the second guy coming off the board. I'm certainly not going any lower than 4. That one is for sure. I just am not sure who I have who I would have 2 and 3 above McCord. I really like Tungavaloa. I do. But there are some limitations there. But again, is that a case of, is that a Maryland issue or is that a Tungavaloa issue? I certainly see. I don't know if McNamara is the guy. I mean, if you sit there and you redraft a team and make it a team that's going to have to win via the air, I don't know if McNamara is my guy. I would feel a lot better with somebody like McCarthy in that situation, but we've seen such a small sample size of McCarthy that you have to take pause there. So for now, I'm going to say third. I'm not convinced who my 2 is right now. We know who the 1 is. That's Stroud. I'm not sure 2 is. I would put McCord 3. And then, I don't know. Whoever out of O'Connell and Tungavaloa may be there. Again, I know I put somebody sight unseen in Gavin Wimsatt for Rutgers. Drew Allard is going to have to be somebody that you have to keep an eye on there, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go to the other side and say who I would not draft, but there are a couple quarterbacks on this board that I would just not draft. I would rather run the Wildcat. I would rather just draft all defense and punt and just try to score on defense. There's just a couple of quarterbacks in this conference that I'm just not very high on, and we will kind of leave it at that. So, Tony, there's my answer to your question. So let's go back. I saw a couple more questions. Westish said, I made my point. McCord's the guy. Sue agrees about McCord right there. It's just me, Tim. Ohio State has the second best quarterback in the Big Ten. It's Kyle McCord. I saw somebody sit there and say they had the third best in Devin Brown. Throw Devin Brown into this mix too. See where I would take sight unseen Devin Brown over a couple of sight seen guys on that list. Just simple. It's just simple. There are a couple guys on that list that just are the antithesis of. I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. So, Aiden O'Connell getting some support there again. I think how much of it was Aiden O'Connell? How much of it was David Bell? I think a lot of it is the head coach there though too. I think they run a very friendly passing system, and we can't run, so we're not going to run. But no David Bell, big problem. So we'll see there. We keep scrolling through here. Drew Allard should be able to beat out Sean Clifford. Well, we'll see. Sean Clifford's not coming back for an open competition, in my opinion. So we'll see there. It was just me, Tim, with the Devin Brown comment. Yeah, Big Kev is right. Big Kev needs to become medium Kev. Big Kev needs to sit there and make some healthier choices. What do we have here? People talking about Mitchell Melton. We'll talk about him, then we'll jump into a little basketball, and then we'll just do one final wrap-up. We're going to try and get off the air here in about 11 minutes. Again, it just comes down to I need to give my voice a little bit of a break before I jump on another show at 2 o'clock. But once again, if you enjoy watching me on my own show, the Big Me Kickoff, be sure to subscribe to that channel. Hit that bell. Give us a thumbs up. If you're listening on YouTube, leave us a 5-star review. Be sure to enjoy all the great programming on the Buckeye Scoop channel with Morning Scoop, Buckeye Weekly Podcast, Gives in the Bank, Around the Oval with Alex Lightman, all of that great programming, be sure not to miss a single thing. We have 35 thumbs up at this point, which I'm happy with. I mean, we've not broken 100 viewers at this point on the live broadcast, so we're doing pretty well with that. Mitchell Melton, we'll see there. I mean, I think he's somebody that they can put a little bit of weight on, and I think that he could be a little bit of an X factor on the defensive line. They're not fully committed to putting him there only, though. He's working with Jim Knowles at linebacker. He's working with Larry Johnson on the defensive line. We certainly need to see more out of the defensive line, and I think some of that is going to come from just the changes in the Jim Knowles defense. I think getting back to not being as predictable, not being afraid to send people, maybe some different asks for what you want to do with your defensive line. I think there's going to be a lot more production points there to be had for the defensive line. Whether or not Mitchell Melton's going to be able to step into that, now's the time. Now is the time to grab opportunity. Opportunity doesn't knock twice in the Ohio State program. Guys get recruited over very quickly, and I'm not saying that Mitchell Melton's been recruited over to this point, to the point of where he's already lost his position, but you're going to get to a point of your career where if you don't, if they sit there and they say, we're calling your number and you can't answer, some real conversations need to be had at that point. So we'll see. I think that he is somebody, though, that has a lot of talent. I think that he's somebody that if he can just kind of put it all together, now's the time. Guys can emerge out of nowhere as they are making changes in terms of what it is that they're going to do on defense. If you're able to, you can come out of nowhere when the expectations, when you don't know what to expect out of the system. I think it's a lot easier to see that happen. Kind of jumping in here, I'd like to see Mike Hall get some reps too. We saw a real small sample size of him and where it looked pretty good. Young kid, his time's coming. His time's coming. You lose Haskell Garrett on in the interior line. You're going to have to kind of reshuffle the deck a little bit right there anyway. So we'll see. I'm going to jump in, talk a little basketball. We'll circle back, get one round of questions, any super chats I may have missed, and we'll go from there. Big Ten basketball tournament starts tonight. 2 games tonight. Northwestern and Nebraska play at 6. Minnesota and Penn State follow. You going to watch? I am. But then again, I'm covering the Big Ten tournament. I will be heading to Indianapolis tomorrow to see the Ohio State game. Ohio State will get the winner of Minnesota-Penn State. Ohio State has a 4-0 record against those two teams this year. Penn State has been a thorn in Ohio State's side historically in the Big Ten tournament, though. So if you're just looking to keep Thursday night simple, I think Minnesota is the better matchup for Ohio State. The big issue is if Ohio State does win on Thursday and then it gets Purdue on Friday, Zed Key, Kyle Young have both been out of the lineup. Zed Key kind of got back in, left, came back in. Kyle Young, undisclosed illness. That's just a horrible matchup if you can't have a little bit of size. I know I've seen Ohio State play small against them. You better have your outside shot falling there. If Ohio State's able to get past Purdue, you get into Saturday, you would get somebody out of the Wisconsin, Maryland, Michigan State draw at that point for that game. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten tournament? Anybody could win it. I don't know if I'll say anybody. I think that the bottom 4 teams, and again, the bottom 4 teams, Minnesota, Penn State, Northwestern, Nebraska. We saw Nebraska pull off a pretty big upset at the end of the year, but I think all those teams are limited. And some of you are like, well, Kevin, Ohio State lost to Nebraska. They sure did. They sure did. They didn't really even compete that well in that game. So I think we saw a team that was at a weird intersection of we should win this game, and we're gassed because we're playing a lot of basketball. And Nebraska came in and wanted it more and took it. Ohio State is firmly in the NC2A field. It's locked in. They could lose on Thursday. It's not going to matter. But not the momentum you want to go in. Lost 3 of their last 4. If you lose the first game in the NCAA or in the Big Ten tournament, you've lost 4 of your last 5. That means a one and done, in my opinion. But what if Ohio State gets past that game? Do you even really care about the Purdue game at that point? Ohio State has gotten something here recently that it hasn't had, and that's called rest. Ohio State had to play 4 games in 7 days to end the season. And now, from Sunday, it's had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're going to have a practice in there, obviously, or 2. But Ohio State probably not doing a lot of physical practice at this point because those legs are shot. I think it's important to win one. Beat Minnesota, beat Penn State, whatever. Have a decent game against Purdue. I don't know if you're moving up significantly if you get past Purdue in terms of your seed line. You never want to sit there and say, just hold back. It's all good. If you lose, it's not a big deal. In some ways, it may be better. You don't coach that way. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Of course, there's going to be the Holtman detractors out there going to be like, couldn't even win the Big Ten tournament in a wide open year. You're dealing with a team that hasn't had Seth Towns all year, really hasn't had Justice Suing, has had guys in and out of the lineup, and now is sitting potentially without Kyle Young and a diminished Zed Key. Injuries have not been friendly to this team, my friends. So there you go. Hoodie saying, who's the best basketball team in the Big Ten? I don't know. Night to night. I mean, I really like Purdue. I really like what Purdue has with Edey and Ivy and some of these other guys on there. I think that they've got a good mixture of shooters and size. I like Matt Painter as a coach, but we've also seen Purdue kind of stumble around a little bit. I'm not really sold on Wisconsin. I'm not really sold on Illinois. I know that Wisconsin had the Conference Player of the Year. I know that we've seen Illinois win when it needs to, but we also saw Ohio State really take it to Illinois. So this is either going to be a year that the Big Ten's going to put 3 in the Final Four, is going to put none in the Elite 8. I mean, I have no read. I think that there are 7 or 8 teams that could win this Big Ten tournament. I really have no idea. So I don't like not having an answer to a question, but I don't have an answer. I don't know who the best team in the Big Ten is. I mean, I guess if you sat there and put my feet to the fire, I'm going to say Purdue. I can't say that with great conviction, though, because I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think any of the coaches know who it's going to be. So, Kid Wilson 33, who's a surprise coming? Are we talking recruiting-wise? I don't know. I mean, Ohio State just came off of a pretty decent recruiting visit on the 8th. They had the couple of Glenville kids in. They had Bryce West from 24. They had Arvell Reese from 23, who earned an offer. I really think that they got a good shot at linebacker Tackett Curtis out of Louisiana. I may head down there. My wife's trying to get me to go with her to see her in-laws for Easter. If I can work that out, they're only 2 hours away from Many, Louisiana. Could maybe swing by and see that. I haven't really discussed it. We'll see on that one, but I think he could be a bit of a surprise. I think the thing is that I don't get surprised by Ohio State's recruiting a ton because Ohio State's recruiting so well. If a kid goes to Ohio State, is that a surprise? Are we really surprised that kid goes to Ohio State? I mean, yeah, there are surprises to certain extents, but if I sat there and said this kid decides to go to Ohio State, you're like, oh my God, I never could have seen that happening. Now, LT Overton, the lineman who's reclassified to 22, who, according to one of the other recruiting networks, is supposed to be taking a visit to Ohio State the weekend of the spring game, I'd be surprised there. I'm not ready to call my shot on Ohio State. I think Ohio State is a team in the mix, but I don't think Ohio State leads there. So, I don't know. You know what? next live show we'll go much heavier recruiting. I'll have better notes put together for that. Let's Kid Wilson 33. Let's put our thoughts there. Thanks for the super chat, Hardy Jins, who came in. Thanks for the chat, Noon. Keep it provocative, but not too sexy. I'm a sexy beast, man. Don't sell me short. I'm a sexy beast. Hoodie, last question before I go. Who's a better Tagovailoa? The thing with Tua is Tua just had a lot more around him, obviously, at Alabama. But I have a hard time taking what I see with him with Miami and say, well, that's really him. It's not his fault that team is just not very good. I don't know. I'll say little bro. What would little bro, if little bro wouldn't have transferred from Alabama, would he have been able to secure that job? That's a good question. I'm just gonna say little bro. I'm not gonna show my work. I'm not sure why. I just don't know. But we're at the 90-minute mark. I think it's been a good show. I want to thank everybody for being part of the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. Once again, one final go. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell. Don't miss out on any of the great programming on the channel. Give us a thumbs up. That certainly helps us out with the algorithm. If you're listening to us on any of the podcasting platforms, go ahead, leave us a 5-star review. That helps us so much in our distribution and gets more people listening to the show. So the next time we do a midweek, mid-Wednesday type of show, maybe we can see our numbers go up a little bit. But there you go. They are remaking Sexy Beasts. There you go. Well, they better do it before the start of football season. I get busy there. So there you go. Been fun. Have a good one. Exactly. I'm out of things to say at this point. I've now got my 29 minutes to get ready for my next show of the day. I want to thank you all for being part of the Big Me Kickoff, and I'll talk to you all very soon.